Hey, good evening, everybody. Want to thank everybody for joining us for the August 2024 CCA State Board Call. Uh, Tonight, we're excited to have Chris Vertopoulos with Chris V's Guide Service. So, hey, Chris, thanks for joining us straight from Buoy 10.
Straight from Buoy 10. Thank you for having me, guys.
Absolutely. So, it's time of year. Everybody's getting really excited about getting out, getting down to Astoria, get the boats in the water, and hopefully get some of these salmon that the Northwest is so famous for. So, how have things been going?
I'd say it's got off to a pretty good start. Um, we had a lot of coho out in the ocean right before the opener, and there was a few Chinook out there too being caught. And right out in front too. We didn't have to travel too far for them, which was nice. Then we had some big tides right at the opener, and those big tides pushed a lot of those ocean coho in, and which it does commonly. And a lot of people are like, oh wow, there's a lot of coho here in Buoy 10, in the river already, because they were catching a bunch there that first week. And but those are really ocean coho that haven't committed to the river yet. They could be going further north somewhere up into Washington or where have you. But then the tides got small and those coho disappeared. And there's been just a very few coho the last couple days caught, not many, but the Chinook numbers are pretty good. I've seen some, back Friday, I saw some decent Chinook numbers. I had the weekend off. Yesterday we had a pretty good day, although it was slow in the morning for us. We did very well in the afternoon on the incoming tide. I didn't get to fish late today. My customers had to quit at 11:15, 11:30 today. And so I didn't see that afternoon bite take off. And it was just barely even decent this morning up. We've been fishing up at Tongue Point the last 2 days because the tides are real small and there's what fish are here have been there. So I'm kind of waiting for some boats to come in late here, and
Mhm.
we'll know how they did the late afternoon bite.
I had heard that the weekend that it was pretty dicey. That the water, it was some big swells that were coming in through the into the river, even just west of the bridge. I guess it was pretty
There
nasty.
was
So
lumpiness yesterday, and it wasn't quite as bad today.
okay. And then I'd heard that the river was like in the high or mid 70s, that it was pretty
I'm getting
warm.
7 degrees on the outgoing tide.
Okay. Okay.
That's what it says on my temperature gauge.
And is that, is there a temperature that you're usually trying to target? Or I mean, you take what
I'd
we
sure
can
like
get.
a little cooler. But we commonly, I've been fishing here for almost 30 years, and we quite commonly get 70 degrees on a low tide, outgoing tide, because that river water year in and year out it's warm this time of year, especially when
Hmm.
we're having, 90-degree days from, basically from Longview up towards all the way to the state borders. Um, those warm days warm up that river, and but the fish, I think they can survive in 71, 72, 73 degrees water, but it starts getting warmer than that and it starts killing fish.
Hmm. Yeah. Um, I had recall last year, kind of that middle of the month, and you can see somewhat of a lull where, the salmon, the fishing hasn't been great. And then, just all of a sudden it's on. You get that late month push of the
Mm-hmm.
Chinook coming in. Have we started to see that yet? I mean, have we
You
had
know,
some good numbers
I would
or good
say
days?
I'd say I've seen some decent fishing already, and I've
Okay.
been pretty happy with the last few days. Um, you'll have, a lot of people think, well, Buoy 10, you're just going to be catching fish constantly all day long, every day. That isn't the case. There's most of the time these fish, the bites will come a couple times a day, maybe, and it happens in flurries more than anything. It's rare. I've seen it happen, but it's rare that the fishing is just lights out all day long, every day.
Mm,
You have some good times and some slower times, and it's just all part of the whole deal. And you got to take it all with the mix. But in general, the fishing's pretty darn good day in and day out here. Weather
nice.
can contribute to, slower times or better times, but they call it the best salmon hole in the world for a reason.
Nice. So have you found, is there a hot plug this year or a hot spinner pattern or what,
I have
what have you
done
seen
best
success?
with spinners, and I'm fishing soft spinners on a 360 flasher behind a Pro Troll. Um, we got fish today. We got a real nice Chinook today on a spin fish. Uh, uh, 2.5 spin fish is the size I've been using the most with a hoochie behind it. In fact, I got one right here I can show you. Can you guys see that there? That's
Yeah.
one of my favorites right there.
Okay.
That's a good one. And but I've been fishing a lot of 3.5 spinners. This is a probably the best one so far this season. You might remember this one, Don. It's a VIP 3.5, and they call it Armageddon. It's got a kind of a Coast Guard coloration back, the red and white stripe. Can you see that? And then the green, the chartreuse green dot on the front, and then I got a little hoochie behind it. And that one, about 28 inches behind a Pro Troll, has been working pretty good. And in fact, I've been fishing at least two of them out that color pattern. But whether you're using spin fish, whether you're using little small spinners behind a Pro Troll, or some people like anchovies, if you can get anchovies, most of the anchovies you're going to be getting are frozen now. It's hard to get fresh anchovies here this year. Or a small little red label herring, you'll get them on all those. But I think becoming more popular, the lures, especially the stuff bait type lures, are becoming more popular because you could just, if you miss a bite, you just leave it out there. You don't have to reel it in and put a new bait on. Just leave it out there and wait for the next fish to come along. Same with
And
spinners. You don't have to reel it in.
are you using a 360 with a spin fish?
Yes.
Yeah. Okay. Okay.
That's why I'm using the small spin fish though, because the larger spin fish will hamper the action of that flasher. See, if you go too big of a lure behind a Pro Troll flasher, you're gonna hamper your flasher's action.
Okay.
So stick with the small stuff.
Got it. All right. Well, I'd love to see some questions from the group. I know that everyone's looking forward to it. I've got a date myself, hoping to be out there on Monday for a few days. So, um,
Good.
good chance to get some info. So,
We've got pretty good tides right now.
okay. Now, is there an area that you've been staying towards, or is it moving around quite a bit, or?
You kind of have to move around depending on the tides, and you got to keep
Mhm.
mobile depending on where the bite is too. I network with some of my guide buddies, talking to them on the phone. If I hear there's a bite 6 miles down the river, I'll travel 6 miles down the river. But you also
Sure.
don't want to get caught up chasing bites, because oftentimes by the time you pick up and get down there, especially if it's a distance, the bite may be over and move somewhere else. So you just have
Mhm.
to be careful that way. But if nobody's catching any fish up above the bridge by the shipwreck for an hour, 2 hours, 3 hours, then it's probably best to go somewhere else. Move downriver. Be flexible.
Yeah, and I understand the shipwreck's pretty much a very common spot anyway. I mean, people are going to tend to hang out there. It doesn't mean that that's where the bite's at right now. So a lot of people
Always
just start there.
really high dependence to fishing the shipwreck up there. Tends to
Mhm.
fish better on the smaller tide series.
Okay. A question from last: are you using any bait on your spinners, like maybe a coon shrimp or?
Nope, no bait on my spinners, just plain spinners. And maybe couple times a day, I'll put some a little bit of scent on there. You could put some Procure bloody tuna or some anise, or I've been using that Bang crawfish scent. That's been working good for me. Kind of take your pick. Some people don't even believe that the scent makes a difference. We didn't used to use it 25 years ago. It's kind of a newer thing. But no, I haven't been fishing any bait on my spinners, just plain spinners or spin fish with some tuna stuffed in there, or chopped up herring or anchovy.
Okay.
I've got another lure I'll show you here too that's been working good. It's actually made by Pro Troll. It's called the E-Plug.
Hmm.
And this has been a very successful lure for me. Maybe not the last couple of days so much, but I catch a lot of fish on it. It's very much like a spin fish in the sense that you can stuff some bait in there, and it spins like a plug cut herring, kind of looks like a plug cut herring. And it's got an E-chip in it too, which they claim mimics the sound of a wounded bait fish. But this thing works good. Check them
Okay.
out. You can buy them at Fisherman's Marine.
And then are you just putting chicken of the sea in oil, or are you putting tuna in
And
there?
other stuff in there too, you know.
Okay.
Some salt, a little bit of anise, some WD-40, all that stuff that fish like.
Yeah,
How
no,
are the
that
sea
sounds
lions?
Not good. We chased around a harbor seal. What was it? Well, that was the day that you were fishing with me on Friday, wasn't it?
That's when my paintball gun wouldn't go off,
That's right.
as I
Yeah, yeah.
remember.
We lost that fish,
Yeah.
and the geese for that matter. Yeah,
Yeah.
they're here. We had a seal, harbor seal again, chasing a fish yesterday, but it didn't get it. We ended up getting the fish before the get it. But today I didn't have any. I hardly had any action today. You know, very little action compared to the last few days because I fished a short day today. But we didn't have any seal problems today. But I saw them up there. They were there.
And Chris, how's your dance card looking? I mean, do you have some availability if somebody wanted to reach out to you for
I
a trip this
don't.
season?
As of right now, I don't. I'm full through September 3rd. I hear there may be an open seat next week, one day. What's that date, Dawn?
Friday at the end of the week with Ravelli?
Yeah,
Oh, you
sounded
mean
like
Owen and Champ?
yeah, next a week from well, coming up this Friday. Yeah, coming up this Friday, the 16th.
Okay.
I haven't somebody's interested.
Well,
I put
okay,
your contact
Ravelli,
information.
yeah. That's Ravelli's group, right?
Yeah.
Okay, so I filled one of those seats.
Yeah, but there's
There-
one more, and Jim told me he says like I don't have enough. I got one guy and then Dawn, so now there's one more that could jump in if anybody's interested. No big deal if we don't.
Yeah, I'll get
Okay.
on the phone. I'll call Ravelli and make sure he hasn't filled it, but I think I can help.
Well, and
Okay.
even if after Buoy 10, when we had you join us previously, we'd spoke a lot about doing the coho fishing like out in the Halem Bay. So you've got that fishery coming up, which is also super productive.
I September. So if somebody's interested in some either Nehalem Bay or offshore coho, that offshore fishery that's coming up in September, they give us the whole month of September out of Garibaldi to keep any two fish. You can keep a wild Chinook, a wild coho, two wild Chinook, whatever combination of any two fish the whole month of September between Cape Falcon and down south. On select they give us, and it's been good. And the coho are really nice size.
I say the coho fish is just
Yep.
getting better.
And we can't get out, we go to Nehalem Bay or Fish Tillamook. Nehalem Bay is pretty deep.
That's subject to a quota, isn't it? I mean, if it's lights out, it could be over in 2 weeks.
But it's been a big quota the last 2 years, and they haven't shut us down.
Okay, yeah, that's fun.
Nice.
And I hope that remains the same because that was some good.
Yeah, we're cutting out a little bit, Chris. Not sure what's going on audio wise, but you kind of keep coming in and out. So, we, I had a good chance to get out. We did some coho fishing out of Garibaldi a couple weeks back, and it was great. We had our first triple, landed all three of them. Two of them were hatchery. One had to go back, but had a ton of drive-bys, and unfortunately, we only went home with 3 fish that day. So, for just a matter of finding it out when you're out there, finding those schools. So. But it was still a great day. So,
Yeah, I've been very happy with the number of coho that have been here offshore. It's I think it's going to be a bigger number than what they predicted.
Okay.
So you didn't fish this weekend, right? You didn't fish?
I didn't fish Saturday or Sunday, no.
So you weren't there for the swim across the Columbia thing? I didn't hear anything about how that ended up. Did everybody safe?
I didn't hear of any problems anyway. So and I missed it.
The problem was doing it in the first place during season. Yeah.
Poor planning.
Yeah.
Are you saying there was an organized swim across the Columbia River? Wow. Okay.
Sunday, yeah, they had and they swam from the Washington side at I believe it was Portuguese Point, all the way to the Maritime Museum on the Astoria side, on an outgoing tide. And
And then
like
peak
I
of
said,
the
I didn't hear
return.
many casualties, so seems like it went okay.
Yeah.
Wow. There's always a first on that one. My goodness. All right.
I guess they had jet skis and kayaks spotting the people. You know, each swimmer had a spotter.
Okay.
Yeah.
Hopefully lots of flags.
Mm-hmm.
All right. Hey, if you
Chris,
some
I got a
questions-
question getting back to fishing here.
Yep.
Okay.
Yeah. So you turned me on last year to skirts on spinfish.
Mm-hmm.
And I want to, are you still a firm believer in those and the smaller spinfish, or have you had any luck with the bigger ones?
I am still a firm believer. And down here, every spinfish that I throw out there's got a skirt behind it. And again, we keep them to the small little, 3-inch skirts, the little small ones. I don't want to put a big one on there. Not to say that wouldn't work, but that's just me. I don't want to put too much water resistance in the water. And that's why I stick to the smaller size spinfish and spinners, because like I mentioned earlier, if you get lure with too much profile, with too much water resistance back there behind your Pro Troll flasher, that's too much pulling pressure on it, and it flattens the flasher out, and your flasher doesn't work well. Your smallest presentation, smallest lures work best behind Pro Trolls.
Okay.
All. And yes, I still believe in skirts 100%.
Okay. And
would
eyes. I know eyes too.
And I like eyes. Yeah.
would you put a 3-inch skirt on a 2.5 spinfish?
Absolutely. Yeah.
Okay.
That's basically what I'm doing here.
Yeah. And I saw that you've got pink and
I'm
chartreuse.
not even sure. That skirt there looks like it's 2 inches to me, I guess, but that's kind of the standard size I use. It's not necessarily the little tiny kokanee ones, but I know in Yamashita brand, they call that the mini sardine. And it, looks like it's about 2 inches long to me, I guess. And here's one on the spinner. Pretty small little skirt behind a spinner.
And you called that the VIP blade was the Armageddon?
Armageddon, yes. That's a killer. It's been a killer this year.
Okay, nice.
What about your trolling speed?
Adjust your trolling speed to your flasher. You want to look at your rod tips and make sure your flashers are pumping like this. Make sure your rod tips are pumping. If your rod tips are pumping like that, you're fishing. If you're not seeing a pumping, you could have some weeds on there. Maybe you're going too slow. I'd reel it up and check it, or speed up, one of the two, so that you're getting that pumping action.
You talked about the scents earlier, and then with the quick fish, or excuse me, not the quick fish, the spin fish. Would you put like the bloody tuna into your tuna mix? Maybe that's a no-brain question, but
well, I might as well just share my recipe with you guys. I don't have a big secret. So I get a can of tuna, Star-Kissed or Bumblebee tuna. It doesn't matter to me. In oil, get rid of most of the oil. Put it in a little bowl. Squirt some WD-40 in there. Put some kosher salt in there. And I'm not real big about like proportion measurements, being real precise. I just kind of throw some of this, throw some of that. I kind of eye it. Sometimes I'll put some anise in there with it. And then I like the bloody tuna gel, because what that does is that thickens up that tuna when you mix it all up, and it makes it stick together really well. And then you can roll it up into a little, kind of almost like a little cylinder, and stuff it into your spinfish real well. And it sticks there better, and it doesn't wash away so fast.
I appreciate that. Thank you.
But there's another product out there that I messed around with this spring that works really well. It's called Mulch by, I think, Millennial is the brand of coon shrimp. And so what this guy's doing is he's taking the heads from the coon shrimp that are the blackened, kind of rotten heads, and he grinds them all up, and he mixes them with some tuna and some anise and some other stuff. And he makes this stuff that it's great for stuffing in spinfish or super baits. And it works really well. It's got a nice smell to it. And look it up. Mulch. It's called mulch. MULCH.
Okay. And you need to buy that fresh, or is that something that you can get online?
He's got preservatives in it. So and
Okay.
and you can buy a Fisherman's Marine carries it. They have it in the cooler there.
You can order it online as well. I just bought 6 jars.
There you go. You know about it.
All right. So Jerry, I'll just swing by your place.
You know, I
Jim.
do thicken mine up a little bit to get that putty-like feel. Like when you're
Yeah.
rolling it up to stick it in, I use a little dried krill in there too, and it really kind of gives the oil something to grab onto, and you can really stick it down in the lure, and it doesn't wash out as easy.
Yeah.
All right.
Makes it stick together. Well, I think that bloody tuna gel, that's what that does.
Jim Kennedy, you got your hand up.
I do. Thanks for sharing those tips, Chris. I
Anytime.
caught my first fish on a spinning fish this spring. And a couple of things you mentioned about getting rid of the oil. I mix 2 or 3 kinds of tuna up, and I've always used them in the super baits and the cup plugs. I always have a batch that's garlic, and I use the granulated dried garlic, and that really helps suck up that oil. The one thing I noticed about the spinning fish, and maybe a couple of things that you mentioned would help, is it seems like I only had one get off, but it seems like if you do get a hit on it, it empties out real fast. So maybe my mixture is a little too wet, or is that, are you finding that can be common when they get struck and not?
I like making it sticky myself, and it stays together better, and I don't feel like I have to stuff tuna in there every 10 minutes or so. So I think making it sticky and kind of thick is important, just so you get some longevity out of it. You're not constantly stuffing your bait. But you know what? I know guys here that stuff it in the morning. Fishing guides that are successful, and they don't put any in all, especially when they're fishing out in the ocean for coho. They don't put any tuna in there at all. They just go out and fish.
Coho hit anything.
Yeah. So we know they without bait in them too. But hey, you want to make it more, more attractive. Put some bait in there and change it every half an hour. So put some new bait in every half an hour.
Right. And compare tuna to like a herring or anchovy fillet stuffed in there.
I have had good success with chopped up anchovy putting in there. I got a little story for you guys. Years ago, I got to fish with Brad Schoenborn out here on a boat, and I was sitting right next to him and on a big charter boat. And he brought the first Brad Super Plug Cut before they were even on the market with. And he showed it to me, and I said that was cool. And what he did was he took an anchovy and he put it on the ground and he squished it with his foot. And he just took a hunk of that and he stuffed it in that Brad Super Plug Cut. And he put that thing out there, and it was hot. It was just hot, just with a squished anchovy that he squished under the heel of his foot.
I'll be down.
And it caught most of that one. And then he pulled another one out, which he gave to me to use. And we caught most of the fish for the whole charter boat that day on those 2 Brad Super Plug Cuts.
Yeah, I find the blackjack in the early spring is just a knockout super cut.
Well, the one we did was the double trouble with the silver with chartreuse on both the top and the bottom.
Yep, the small one's one of my favorites. Thanks, Chris.
Yeah. Benny, you're welcome.
Yeah, I was going to ask on color patterns for the spinfish. Is there one that you tend to lean towards, kind of same color patterns that you were just sharing?
Ultimate favorite right there. And I don't know what you call it, but it's silver with red herringbone.
Mm-hmm.
My favorite. And you can see I put an eye on there too. Sticky eye. Today we did well with it was silver with blue scale and a pink coochie, that same color pink coochie behind it, the little pink skirt. That's been a good, we got 2 bites on that today, 1 Chinook and another bite we missed on that today.
Kathleen's iPad has been waving.
Oh, you're on mute there, Kathleen's iPad.
How's that?
There you go.
Okay.
Can hear you now.
Yeah, the question I have is next week there's some really big tides. And how do you fish those? I'm trying to think, do you go out or do you wait to go out a little bit and catch the last part of that? And, you know, because as it's going out really hard, I think it's like -1 or 2 or something like that. I actually got 2 different things on that. But anyway, I was curious, how do you fish the really big tides when they're big in the morning?
On a big outgoing tide, your best action is going to be right at the start of that outgoing tide, and then right at the very end before, you know, really starts slowing down during what they call maximum ebb or maximum outflow. Well, that is your worst time to be fishing. And if you got to fish during that time, my suggestion is to get into what we call the lee of the tide. So one thing we like to do is get behind or downstream of Desdemona Sands, right down there below that piling. That island kind of breaks the current on both the Washington Channel and the Oregon Channel. And so you can go a little slower in there. You're still going to have to troll downstream, zigzag downstream, and go as slow as you can. But then once that tide starts calming down and getting towards low tide, that's going to be your best time right there. So fish the ends of the tides during big tides most effectively. And then when the tide turns around and starts coming in, I feel pretty good generally all through a big incoming tide. We tend to do really well for coho, especially on incoming tides. It can be from the start of the tide, especially after that first rip comes, to the second rip. And then all through that incoming tide, you can catch lots of coho and some Chinook too. But the outgoing maximum ebb, that's the worst time of the tide to be fishing during a big tide.
Sure. So let's say sometimes next week, right in the middle of the big outgoing, do you wait a little bit to go out?
Yeah,
Instead
there's
daylight,
even worse. In the mornings, we'll do a late start just so I avoid that maximum ebb.
okay.
You know, we make 8:30. Because it's kind of useless to spend your time fishing during the worst part of the tide. But I'll try and fish later if the weather allows to, and catch more of that incoming tide. Try to put in a full 7-8 hours.
Yeah. Okay. Now, when you say big, what'd you say? The big ebb tide, or is that the middle of it? Is that what you're talking about? That's in the middle of where it's really rushing out. Is that what you're talking? And then
yeah, during the tide, about two hours into it on each end, you got the heaviest flow, and that's on an outgoing tide. That's your least productive time of the whole day, and that's the time to maybe go to the restroom, take a break, or if you have to fish in the lee of or kind of a protected part of Desdemona Sands or an island or something where it's not pushing as hard. But if you're in the main channel, like the shipping channel or over closer to the Washington Channel, you got a hard outgoing push. And it's just, you would be trolling too fast to really effectively fish. Not to say you can't catch one every now and then, but
sure.
You know, the times when that tide's going to slow down for you.
So are you talking to be protected from the Desdemona Sands? Are you talking being up above the sands? I mean, like
no, I'm talking about low downstream of sands, right out kind of in front of Ham. There's that big piling. I'm not talking about the checkerboard piling. I'm talking about the Desdemona piling is what they call it. It's a single piling and it's got a white cap on it.
Okay.
That's the bottom end of Desdemona Sands. Consider it an island kind of. And you get downstream of that and you're not in the shipping channel on the Oregon side, and you're not in the old channel on the Washington side. And so it's kind of protected from the heaviest current. And so that's where I would fish during the maximum if you really wanted to fish during the maximum ebb.
It just sounds it's a good time to wait it out, actually, most of the time.
It's a good time to wait it out.
Okay. Lunchtime, breakfast, I don't know. Okay, thank you.
Break.
Yeah.
Good question. So you had mentioned that anchovies, that we don't see fresh anchovies down there at the current moment, or?
My understanding is that some days they've been getting them in over in Ilwaco and Chinook, and then Gene at Tackle Time gets them some days, but not every day. There's nowhere in Astoria proper where we can get fresh anchovies this year. There's just no bait place selling them. Okay. And Yeah, so I haven't had every year I buy fresh anchovies. This year I haven't been buying any. I just take some red or green label herring with me, and I have some frozen anchovies that I'll bring once in a while too. I'd sure like to have fresh anchovies. They work good.
Yeah. With the anchovies, and we've used the frozen as well. Do you like the helmets, the wire helmets? Do you use those very often, or?
Yeah, especially if I'm using a frozen anchovy, I will use a helmet with the wire type I use. But when we get fresh anchovies, I can fish them on just a double hook rig, and you've probably seen the rig where you can twist the leader between the two hooks around the top hook a little bit to shorten up the distance, depending on the size of the anchovy. But you can fish them curved, just a curved plane through the lips from the bottom up through the nose and get it to spin, and it works great. And if it's a small enough anchovy, you can fish it behind a pro troll just fine.
Okay. Now, color of the pro trolls, I mean, there's so many different options that you have at this point. Does it really matter? I mean, it's the movement, a little bit of flash.
I like to really stick to the silvery, bright ones with UV and plaid and lots of silver, because don't forget, a pro troll is supposed to mimic a salmon. That's what a salmon thinks a pro troll is. It's another salmon that's feeding. And salmon aren't chartreuse, salmon aren't red, they aren't pink, they're silver. So keep that in mind. The pro troll is supposed to mimic another salmon. I'm not saying that chartreuse and some of the cool colors don't work from time to time, but I tend to just stick with what's closer to the natural pattern. I use lots of silvers.
Do you use triangles at all?
I have them with me, but I haven't put them on yet this year, and I always have them with me. But the tides are really big and pushing hard. Sometimes it's better to put a triangle on because you can go slower, and they can fish at very slow speeds. Whereas a pro troll, you have to be going at least a certain speed to make them work right. I see people out there using them now, and they're catching fish on them, but I feel confident enough most of the time with a pro troll, so I just stick to pro trolls all the time. But it never fails. I always bring triangles with me.
Right, good to have them. So, all right. Other questions from the group?
You bet.
We got some more people that have joined in, so appreciate everybody for showing up tonight.
Kathleen's iPad.
Well, another question. Okay.
Okay, yes. Another question. Do you ever add UV to your blades, or do you find most of them anymore have UV already on them?
Most of the commercial blades have UV, a coating painted on top of them. And then there's additives you can add to the paint to increase the UV profile, I guess you could say. I believe in UV. I believe it makes a difference. I've gone as far as now I have a couple of these little UV flashlights that I keep at home and one in my tackle box. And I can look at a lure and turn that flashlight on, especially in darker conditions, and I can tell if that lure shows up bright or not. And keep in mind that it matters to the fish. So UV is important. I believe in it.
So does the spin fish and that probably have it on also, do you think?
Yeah. Fish, the last 2-3 years, they've been coating them with a UV clear coat.
Okay.
And not to say it doesn't come off. It's hard.
I know. Well, and do you ever go and you probably don't have the time and you do so much, but should the average fisherman every once in a while recoat this to try and spray their stuff or put another coating of UV on, or will they just mess things up?
I think it can be done. I don't mess with it. I don't have the time or the equipment to do it. I mean, you need a full on, airbrush and the right kind of paint. I don't know what kind to use. I just buy the darn lures,
Right.
and comes off of them, and I just buy new lures.
Okay.
I wish it was, but that's the way it is.
Yeah. I was just
Can I
wondering.
add to that a little bit?
Go ahead. Well, they do
So-
tend to get beat up a bit, and that's why I was wondering, as far as
They often
would-
still can fish, even though the paint's coming off.
yeah. Okay. Thank you.
Mhm.
Les's iPhone.
Hey, Chris, going back to your skirts on your spinners or your spin and fish, if you were to follow those fish on up the river maybe where the water temperature is even warmer, would you still be confident in running a skirt behind those? I've heard people don't really like them once the water temperature starts warming up.
Well, I'm fishing in some pretty warm water down here on the outgoing tides too, and I keep the skirts on. But when I have found that I like to take the skirts off and just fish a couple beads in the spinner blade, or maybe tubing, a little bit of tubing, couple beads in the spinner blade, is in the springtime when the water warms up, like at the head of the channel or down at Kelly Point. That's when I don't fish skirts. That's the only time I fish most. But most of the fall fishing that I do, I'm fishing skirt.
Okay, thank you.
Mm-hmm.
And are you, and I think I asked this or hinted at it earlier, but you showed chartreuse pink. How about, like, I've seen purple? Are there some other colors that certainly good to throw out there? White?
Blue's been good for me this season so far. But you know, Columbia River fish like reds and pinks. That's true in the spring, that's true in the fall, it's true in the summer. Reds and pinks and oranges work good on the Columbia. I've learned that years and years ago, and I remember old timers saying that. So there's some truth to that. I'm sure of it. But your other colors that don't show up so well to the fisherman's eye, like the blues and metallic greens and stuff, they work good too. I'm a big fan of blue. I love blue for steelhead. I love blue for salmon, blue for springers, especially when you throw some contrasting chartreuse or what have you mixed into it, or some pink. Blue is a favorite color of mine, always has been.
Me too. All right.
And you said something I think is really important. Look at what color your lures are with your UV flashlight, because that'll tell you which colors are brighter, which ones show up, which ones have the better coating on them, all that.
I bet most of you guys know what a daredevil spoon is, right? You've all seen a daredevil spoon. It's a red and white spoon with a kind of squiggly white line through the middle of it. They've been around forever. It's got just basically, regular red on the sides and white down the middle. You put that UV flashlight on a daredevil spoon, those red sides turn dark brown and the white shows up really good. So it's the white on that darn lure that's catching the fish and the nickel plated back that's catching the fish. I think a modern daredevil would have a UV infused red, fluorescent red on the sides and white, flat white down the middle. That would show up really well to a fish. But they didn't know about UV and UV colors back then when they made the Eppinger Daredevil 100 years ago. But to a fish underwater, that spoon looks like basically a black and white lure.
All right, we've probably got time for maybe a couple more questions for Chris. Anybody else have someone? Throw it in the chat, raise your hand. Chris, you shared a lot with us tonight, and certainly appreciate it. I know sounds like quite a few of us are heading down there, and we've been taking notes, so we'll be putting it to the test. Appreciate it.
Lots of people down, but it is buoy 10. There's lots of room.
I'm doing that swim next week. I'm going to be swimming.
I'll come out and rescue you, Don.
Yeah, I'd certainly be cheering you on.
Don, if you do that, I'll paddle the kayak next to you.
Yeah, we'll be quite a pair.
Yeah, get ready for your golf cart ride this year.
Oh, yeah, for sure. Oh, speaking of that, we have announcements?
We do, but I just want to ask Chris, anything else you want to close with? Appreciate you being here.
Well, thank you for having me, you guys, and just enjoy yourselves. Go fishing as much as possible. It isn't always about catching lots and lots of fish. We enjoy the company we're with, and we enjoy the environment. Oh, but yesterday we got to see a humpback whale jump completely out of the water, maybe 5 yards from us. I mean, its tail cleared the water. And, to me, that's a big part of why we do what we do too, seeing what's going on out in the wild and and seeing all that Mother Nature has to offer. I really enjoy everything about fishing, not just catching fish.
Amen.
You should stick around for our trivia contest. You might have a shot at it. It's a pretty
Okay.
good.
Well,
Okay, before we get to the trivia, we've got something new tonight. We're going to try and begin bringing a government relations committee update, or GRC. Les, turn the phone over to you. You've got some updates to share.
Yeah, can you hear me okay,
We
Wade?
can. Yes.
Okay. I've just got a few talking points. This is something obviously new for the Zoom meeting. This is not really intended to be a question and answer scenario. This is just going to give our members kind of an update on what our leadership on the GRC is actively involved in. So with that, I'll go ahead and the first on the list is the Willamette River Hatchery funding with the Corps of Engineers. There are encouraging information from ODFW, and that the Corps of Engineers has found additional funding to cover part of the shortfall on the hatchery funding. But ODFW is still not certain, and that the full funding will come through, and are concerned about the ability to cover current production. We're hoping to hear from ODFW, more on this from ODFW soon, and we may need to, or ODFW may need to, secure funding through the emergency process through the legislature, and then seek reimbursement from the Corps of Engineers at a later date. CCA is still continuing to work with our congressional delegation to hold the Corps of Engineers accountable for their mitigation responsibilities and funding these hatcheries. Second on the list is the ODFW's hatchery review process that's currently going on. CCA Oregon staff and members have attended all the initial meetings of the legislatively mandated third-party review of ODFW's hatchery system. They want you to be aware that there is an important meeting coming up on August 28th. CCA will be sending out a action alert to its members with the date, time, and location for that meeting, and asking as many people as possible to attend that. That's going to be apparently a real important meeting when it comes to this hatchery review process. The next on the list is the Oregon Department of Fish and Wildlife's budget and fee increase. CCA Oregon supports ensuring ODFW has the necessary funding to maintain current operations, including hatchery production. However, we are concerned that this burden can't be met solely on the backs of hunters and anglers. A fee increase must not be too large and must also be tied to activities that are a priority for anglers. And anglers must have confidence that the funds will benefit their fisheries. CCA Oregon will be sending a formal letter to the governor and the legislators ahead of the legislative session, where the fee increase must be reviewed and approved. And the last thing on our list is the continuing Columbia River gillnet reforms. The Columbia River endorsement will also be up for reauthorization next year. CCA Oregon will again work to tie the endorsement to gillnet reforms, including measures to fully transition gillnets out of the main stem Columbia River. Our efforts in 2021 helped keep Washington Department of Fish and Wildlife from reversing the reforms. The legislature may also consider a gillnet buyback as part of a package. Heath Hickla has participated in 2 meetings of a work group created by Senate Bill 1509 to craft a potential buyback for the legislature to consider in the upcoming session. And that is all the GRC has for an update.
Awesome. Hey,
Thank you,
thanks,
Les. That's great.
Yeah,
That's a
appreciate all
nice
the work that
addition.
Appreciate all the work that you guys are doing. Thanks, Heath.
Good to
All
know.
right. So I do have a couple announcements, things that are going on here. Coming up into September, we've got a couple banquets. So Saturday, September 7th is the Portland Golf Tournament banquet that they do every year at Colwood. Always a good time. And then also we've got on the 28th, the Gorge, their annual banquet's going to be at the Columbia River Hotel. Doors open there at 4:30. Prime rib or chicken cordon bleu. Hello, that sounds pretty amazing. Hey, Jim, can you remind us what time does your event kick off for the Portland Golf Tournament?
Excuse me. Golfers show up. Excuse me. Golfers show up at 9. Tournament starts at 10. Our banquet, the doors will be open and ready to go by 11. But we lunch about noon, and banquet activities and auction starts right after noon.
Awesome.
And you don't have to be a golfer to come to the event. We've got plenty of other things going on, and I appreciate your comments. It is a fun event, and it's outdoors, and it's a blast.
Yeah, everybody that goes has a good time. So very good.
Thanks.
And then we're also going to be having our Oregon CCA banquet. This will be a new event. Been a couple of years on hiatus, but it's picking up speed quick. That's going to be November 16th. So this is the Oregon CCA banquet, new location. It's going to be at the Wingspan Event and Conference Center. That's in Hillsboro, Oregon. I don't have the times. I'd wager it's probably around a 4:30 opening as well. But we'll see some of those details published here shortly. And then the big thing is, we still have the R&B drift boat. So we're doing our raffle. This is an 18 by 60 foot boat, beautiful boat. It's got a custom trailer, Sawyer oars. It's got the whole anchor system. It is ready to go. Hook it up to your truck, put it into your river, and go catch some fish. But that drawing is going to be on December 7th, $20 per ticket or 6 for 100. So good deal there. And that is all I have got. So Dawn, take her away.
Okay. Also enter the photo contest. Give away an edge rod every month. We're end of this month a little bit. It's kind of cool. It's easy to submit it. Easy to go to the website and post it up. The stuff that's on Facebook, you can just link to it. Okay, so this is a question that I don't know whether to have people. Does everyone know how to raise their hands? Their little hand on their screen, or your hand. I don't know whether because I think there are some people that probably aren't able to go into chat. Can everybody who can't go into chat?
I probably don't know how to.
Yeah. So wait, should we just go with a hand up like this? I'll ask the question. Okay.
I'll have a hard time guessing who raised their hand first. So
well, we'll all judge.
Okay.
Okay. So you can win this really cool Coast multi-tool. It's actually pretty sweet. It's not a Leatherman, but it's got all the gizmos. Like any non-Leatherman, it has a real marginal knife, but it's pretty cool. It doesn't float, I can guarantee that. And this is special because you can pick that, or you can pick this sharpener called a Pivot Pro by Worksharp. I keep this in my boat. It's pretty nice right there. Plastic, easy to use. Okay, so the first person to come up with 4 rivers in Oregon, Washington, British Columbia for the first 4 letters in the alphabet, A, B, C, D.
I'm going to take a stab at it.
I knew you should have waited around. Okay.
So this is good for the Northwest, including British Columbia.
Yes.
Correct?
Yep.
Okay. The American River.
Yep.
The Babine River. The Kalawa River. And the Deschutes River. A, B, C, D.
I'll bring it on Friday. You want the tool or the sharpener? Your choice.
Oh, geez. How about the sharp? I could use the sharpener.
Okay. I'll bring them both for you, for being our guest. That's the first one that's the first one Jim Kennedy hasn't won. He does this whole banquet with winning this thing. That's all the Door prize.
I'll show
I,
up
would-
or
I,
give Jim.
I had 4
Honey.
different ones named, but I was not going to participate this month.
I started to say you couldn't participate. I thought, oh, he'll be hurt.
I'm not going to be that. I'm not that selfish.
All right.
That's outstanding.
Well, thank you,
Hey,
Chris.
Don,
welcome. Thank you.
Wade, Don, Wade, Jim, can you guys hang on for 2 minutes after everybody gets off?
Sure.
Sure can. I'm gonna wrap
Are
up
you
the
upset
recording
because you
right
didn't
now.
win the contest, Les?
I'm upset.
Hey, thank you, everybody. Have a
Okay.
great night.
Yeah.
Thanks
bye-bye.
again, Chris, for being here. And thanks, Wade, for running the show again.
All right.
You.